Hi Year 9, welcome back to lesson 2 of our urbanisation topic. Today's lesson is all about land use zones within urban areas. So we're going to be able to describe the factors which led to the growth of cities and the land use patterns within these. In other words, we're going to look at how cities have grown over time and what they look like from the middle of a city right out to the edge of cities. So we've got some keywords for today. CBD, now this is shortened from Central Business District. This is the middle of a town or city, and this is where you find most of the shops and the offices. So if you think about London, right in the centre of London, you don't find any houses really, you just see lots of tall buildings, old buildings that are shops, restaurants and offices. Land use. Now, this is what we say when we try to describe what the land is used for within an area. So it could be residential, that means people live there. It could be commercial, so shops and restaurants, or it could be industrial, factories and warehouses. And this term here, the urban or rural urban fringe. This is the area where the countryside meets the town or the city. So right at the edge, the end of the city, and then where countryside starts to happen. All right, here's your quiz. So just write down the answers and see how you go. Pause the video. Okay, let's see how well you did. Get your green pens out. The number of people who live within 1 square kilometre is known as population density. The north of Scotland is sparsely populated. Name a city which developed on coalfields in the UK. Leeds. Which of these cities developed in a low land area? Birmingham. Give one advantage of locating cities in low land areas. Well, they're easy and cheap to build on, and they have a milder climate. Name a key port city in the UK. Liverpool. The term used for the actual place where a settlement first grew up. This refers mainly to its physical setting, for example, coastal location or a flat valley. This is a site. A site which is secure is often referred to as a defensive site. Right, so with all that in mind, we're going to have a look at this activity. This shows figure 1, an area of Britain before any settlements were built. So if you imagine before humans came and settled and started to build cities and other settlements, this is what it would look like. Now you have 4 options, A, B, C and D. I want you to use the key here to help you. I want you to decide which is the best location, A to D, for building a new settlement. So think back to last lesson of all the things that are needed to make a good site. So, number 1, you've got to order the sites 1 to 4. So 1 being the best option and 4 being the worst. 2, you have to then answer these. So fill in the blanks and then give me an advantage. And then for number 3, give me a disadvantage. Give yourself 5 minutes, guys. Okay, so get out your green pens and let's see how well you did. So I'm not going to read these out, but I'm going to put the answers on the board and then you can use them. Anything that is similar, you can give yourself a tick. So pause this video just to have a read through of these points. Okay, so at the beginning I said we are looking at how and why cities have grown and what do they look like from the centre all the way out to the edge of the city. So it says here, cities have distinct land zones or land use zones. Land use, remember, means what you find within that area. What is the land used for? Is it residential, industrial, or commercial? So here we've got a map of Bradford. Now Bradford is in the northeast, just outside of Leeds. So we looked at where Leeds was last lesson, and you have an idea of what happened in Leeds. Remember, it was used for mining. So if we have a look here, what you can see on the map is very distinctive. You can see the roads, which are the red lines. These are the main roads. Then you've got the green roads, and then all the way down to the yellow, smaller B roads here. You can see in between, in this area here, and all the way around the map, these little kind of peach squiggles. You can see just in there, all around in there. Now they show the buildings. You can see there's a distinct difference between the sort of west side of Bradford compared to the east side. On the west side, you can see there are a lot more buildings all squashed together. So everywhere around in this area here, there are a lot more buildings squashed together. Whereas if you go towards the east, there are fewer buildings. So this white area you can see here, if you remember OS maps, and this is what it is, these sort of white spaced areas there represent green land. So they could be fields and they can be farms. So you can see that from west to east there is a distinct difference in the land use. West there are more buildings, and east there are fewer. So if we go back to that term that we looked at the beginning, the CBD, you can see where that is there. It is normally the oldest part of the city, and the city grows out from this point, like a bit like an onion, where it has many rings. That's what the city was like. So the CBD would be right in the middle, and the city would have expanded from there. Next, so if you think about the onion, the next layer there, we call it the inner city. Now this is still an old part of the city, as it would usually be built in the 18th to 19th centuries. Why was it built then? Well, that's the time of the Industrial Revolution, when lots of people started to move to these cities to get jobs. So especially in the factories and the mining industry that this area had. The houses here are in rows. They're called terraced housing. That means they're all in a long line like this, all split up into small-ish houses. There are no gaps in between, and they are called terraced housing. Why are they like that? Well, it just means you can fit more houses into a smaller space. So you'll find in this area that there are lots and lots of houses and not a lot of space. This area is close to the CBD. This meant that back in the 18th, 19th century, in the Victorian era, people could actually walk to work and walk to the shops. So it was a very convenient location. Next, we find the suburbs. So if you think about the outer layer here of the sort of onion of the city, is the suburbs. Now these are more modern housing, so these are a bit newer compared to the inner city, probably built in the 1930s. Now these are on the outskirts of the cities, and they're normally built around cul-de-sacs. Cul-de-sac is sort of like a dead end or a road like that. So you probably live like this. There you are, and you've got houses there. And then the last bit is right on the outskirts of the city, and this is called the rural urban fringe. This is where the city meets the countryside, and it's home to new developments and developments which require a large amount of land. So people that have really large back gardens here, probably loads of fields around them, lots of green space, lots of vegetation, and new builds as well, so new housing. And that is what a typical city looks like. And you can relate this to London as well. So for example, where our school is, Sedge Hill School, it's found towards the suburbs of London. And as you see here, the city grows outward, usually in a circle pattern like this. I'm going to look at that next. So this circle model is called the Burgess model. And this man, a geographer called Burgess, produced this model to show what all cities look like. So he said that the land use zones in these cities were all found in the same areas. So you can apply this model to any city, especially in the UK. So from the central part is the CBD, going out to the inner city, inner suburbs, outer suburbs, or rural urban fringe. And that's what every city in the UK would look like. If you travelled from the centre all the way out to the countryside, that's what it would look like. What I'd like you to do now is have a look at these statements in the table. I want you to decide which part of the city they belong to. So do they belong in the CBD, inner city, suburbs, outer suburbs, or rural urban fringe? Excuse my writing. All right, so where do they belong? I give yourself about 10 minutes to write out these statements and then write where they go. You'll need these statements in a minute, so I suggest writing them out in full. Okay, so here are the answers for that activity. So just give yourself a tick with your green pen or change it up, and then we are going to use these statements in a minute. For the next activity, I want you to get a pencil, and if you've got a pair of compasses to draw circles, I suggest you use that too. If not, just do the best circles you can, because we are going to draw the Burgess model. So the model we've just seen on a second ago. We're going to draw that circular model to show the different parts of the city. Okay, so here it is. So using those statements, I want you to draw your own Burgess model. I want you to write these statements in the right ring of the Burgess model. So there's an example here. I know it's quite fuzzy to see, but I think you get the idea. You can draw little diagrams, little pictures to help explain what you see there. Okay, so once the images are complete, you can draw some images to show the different characteristics. So really spend some time on this, guys, and make it look really good. Off you go. For this activity, I want you just to read the 2 paragraphs that are in this box. So it says here, the Burgess model is a blank land use model. You can see that this paragraph has blanks, and they're numbered 1 to 4. What I'd like you to do is just write the numbers 1 to 6 in your books, and then write the correct word that would go in that blank. It's quite easy, so don't copy out those paragraphs. Just read the paragraphs and then write what the answer would be. So it would be like 1 equals and whatever word goes there. Then there is a challenge. I want you to suggest how the land use model is wrong. Give evidence to support this. And what are the impacts of new developments locating in the urban-rural fringe? Okay, so again, green pen, let's see what you did for your answers. So you should have put that the Burgess model is an urban land use model. It only looks at urban areas, cities. It grows from the centre. It breaks the city up into age and also into 3 intersections. The oldest part is the centre, known as the CBD. Around the centre is the light industrial area, which is then surrounded by terraced housing, known as the inner city. The newest part of the city is known as the suburbs, which has big, modern, spacious housing. Right, here we go. This is your independent extended writing task. Now, we're going to use Bradford, because we looked at that earlier, as our example. I don't mind if you would like to use London or Lewisham as your example and go out from Lewisham to the rural urban fringe. You can use anywhere, but for this case I'm just going to use Bradford, and you can use Bradford too if you want. So what do you have to do? You have to imagine that you have been on a geography field trip and you have walked from the CBD to the rural urban fringe. You're going to write a letter describing how the built environment, how the city, has changed throughout the different zones. So you've got to use everything in this success criteria. Okay? So here is some PLC, place-specific information, that you can use. So I suggest pausing this and using this information within your writing if you are using Bradford as an example. If you are using other places as an example, then you need to have some information to add to your work. Otherwise, it's not going to be detailed enough. So we're going to look at this example and see if it reaches and meets the success criteria here. So, dear friend, I've had a very tiring day walking from the CBD of Bradford, West Yorkshire, to its rural urban fringe. I saw some varied and interesting things and did learn a lot. For example, in the CBD, the buildings were generally high and densely built. I also saw Bradford Cathedral, a historic landmark in the CBD. In the inner city of Bradford was a major A road intersection, and there were 4 A roads, and where 4 A roads join, close to Bradford Hospital. As I travelled through the suburbs of Dudley Hill, I noticed larger houses, some with gardens, and into suburbs of Burley. I noticed some cul-de-sacs. Finally, as I approached the edge of the city, the rural urban fringe, the built environment became less dense, and places like Tyersall had houses that backed onto fields and farmland. This was more sparsely spaced. So, did this meet the criteria? They've used PLC in the beginning, they've explained the building feature, they've said that it's dense, they've used more PLC for cathedral. Yes, they've explained the layout, which is number 2, and they've used more PLC. Again, more PLC with names, they've explained the housing feature, the layout of the roads, PLC, and building density. So the first paragraph is really strong for the CBD. There is no mention of the inner city though. The suburbs are mentioned, but no mention of density. So this does not meet the success criteria fully, as 1, 2 and 3 are not covered for all zones. Place-specific information is a strong feature throughout. So even though they've used lots of PLC, they haven't described the 4 areas of the city.